The Retirement Cafe podcast, Annuities Unpacked, securing your retirement in today's economy. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Retirement Cafe podcast with me, your host, Justin King. If you're thinking about your retirement or already retired, you're in the right place. My aim is to help you plan for and live a successful and meaningful retirement. Retirement is far more than just a financial event. It's a significant life event, a major transition, which will bring with it new challenges and opportunities. So each episode contains tips, information, and inspiration to help you feel more informed and confident about your retirement. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me for the latest episode of the Retirement Cafe podcast. Today we're diving into the perplexing topic of why more people don't buy annuities to provide a guaranteed income in retirement. And who better to have this conversation with than Billy Burrows. Billy is a highly regarded financial advisor with over 30 years experience and founder of the Retirement Planning Project, which aims to make it easier for people to get information and help on all aspects of retirement planning. In our conversation, Billy and I explore some of the reasons that deter potential annuity buyers from securing their retirement income. We explain mortality drag and mortality cross subsidy, plus why buying annuities in stages could be beneficial. We also discuss the impact future government policy could have upon pensions and annuities in light of the upcoming general election. So without further ado, here's Billy to share his vast experience and expertise. Welcome to the Retirement Cafe podcast, Billy Burrows.
Hello, thank you. It's good to be with you again.
Always good to chat with you, Billy. You are our regular podcast guest, talking all about annuities, and annuities are now back in the news. Becoming much more popular for the audience who may kind of only heard of annuities when they won something at Community Chest on the Monopoly board. Your annuity pays out. Can you just remind us, myself and the audience, what is an annuity?
Well, thank you, Justin. An annuity is quite simply a product that converts a pension pot into a stream of regular income. You can think of it as like a mortgage in reverse. Let's say you give £100,000 to an insurance company. They'll say, if you're in your 60s, you've probably got 25 years to live, and we're going to repay you back your capital plus a certain amount of interest. And that's the key thing, because back in the days of Liz Truss's fiscal event, interest rates started to jump up. And now that the interest rate on annuities is very high, it's like investing your money and getting a 4% return on your investment, but at the same time getting your capital back. And the important bit with an annuity is that it carries on until you die. So you can think of it as, insurance against outliving your income.
Yeah. So a fantastic product for some people. Now, of course, annuities really fell out of favour, didn't they? Because obviously we had a long sustained period of low inflation and low interest rates. And of course, people looked at the annuity that they could buy from an insurance company and kind of went, I don't fancy that. But we are in a different world now, aren't we?
Well, that's right. If you remember back to the credit crunch in 2008, and interest rates fell so low, and sort of back to this, mortgage in reverse. If you had a mortgage during the credit crunch, you were very lucky because you were paying a very low rate of interest. But that was bad for people with money in the bank and bad for people buying annuities. But now that interest rates have increased, then annuities are paying a much higher income and a much higher, much better value for money.
Yeah. Now, in the financial advisor community that obviously I'm part of, Annuities are kind of only provided for by a handful, I think, of insurance companies in the UK. It's not as though it's not like motor insurance where there's hundreds of different providers. There's not that I don't. You could probably tell me how many providers there are, but it's not hundreds, is it? I mean, it probably doesn't go beyond 20. I wouldn't have thought.
Well, it's worse than that. I mean, there's literally half a dozen. I mean, I can name them on one hand. You've got Aviva, Legal and General, Just Retirement, Standard Life, Scottish Widows, Canada Life. I don't think I've missed anybody off that list.
Now, the experience that I've seen from the forums that I'm part of is that annuities, the resurgence of annuity popularity has kind of taken insurance companies a little bit by surprise. And the levels of service that provided to advisors like myself, it has been relatively frustrating, I think, from the comments in the forum.
Well, I mean, don't forget, I'm an advisor myself. I pull my hair out dealing with them. So the reality is if we cast our minds back, sort of 10, 15 years, annuities were, really quite popular, and the insurance companies were geared up for volumes. Along comes pension freedoms, the volumes fall off a cliff. All of the insurance companies downsize. If there aren't huge sales, they don't have big teams, and they found it very difficult recruiting. And the problem is, and it's the same with a lot of insurance companies. You get rid of good people, and the collective history and understanding of the products just disappears. So I do pull my hair out, because if I hadn't had some of the conversations and bad experiences with insurance companies, I wouldn't believe it. But it really is awful. But give them credit; they are putting resources and they are getting better.
Good. So let's think about the retiree who's considering, getting to retirement at the moment. They finished a lifetime of work, and they're looking at their pension pots. Now, I'm not absolutely sure. We know an awful lot of people are not even considering an annuity. So how do we get people to start looking at them and to go, really working out whether they're good value or not?
Well, the short answer is we need some two-handed advisors, and this is quite a serious issue, because no disrespects to advisors, but a lot of advisors prejudge their advice. Someone's coming to see me, they've got a couple of £100,000. We're not going to play up the annuity. We're going to promote drawdown and SIPs because we can add value and we can take our fees. But someone like me, who's what I call give balanced advice, I'm saying to people, look, you come up to retirement, and if you want to convert your pension pot into income, there's only two things you can do: some sort of annuity or some sort of drawdown, and you really have to compare the benefits. So we do need, more education, and also we need to overcome people's misconceptions of annuities. I've been involved with annuities for a long time, and if you read the press or you read the comments on articles, my favourite is annuities are legalised theft. My best one ever is my dog could have done better. It's a bit like politics, isn't it? It's easy to throw stones, it's easy to play things down, but if you have a proper analysis, then you come to a different conclusion. And I think where I come from is saying that, like you, if you're a good advisor, what you do with a client at retirement, you say, let's start with a clean sheet. Let's have no preconceived ideas, and let's just work step by step through your objectives. And the hardest part in all of this is getting people to articulate their objectives. And what do I mean by that? It's a bit like Boris Johnson. People want their cake and eat it. If you say to people, do you want flexibility? Yeah, I want flexibility. Do you want to leave money to the kids? Of course I want to leave money to the kids. Do you want a secure income? Of course I want a secure income. Are you worried about a stock market crash? Oh, we're really worried about that. Do you want to take risk? Well, we don't want to take much risk. You say, well, let's just unpack that. Some of what you said is bang on the nail, for pension drawdown. Some of what you said is an annuity, but you can't have both, and there are trade-offs. Now, I think a more sophisticated way of looking at this is what I call transitioning into retirement. So a lot of my clients, I'll say, look, here you are in your 60s, you've just retired from, a decent job, or you've been running your business, you're used to being in control, you're used to making decisions, you want to carry on having a role in running your pension pot, and you are worried about, falling under the proverbial bus, and you want to leave money to the kids. So in early retirement, it's quite right and proper that, you start off in drawdown. But as you get older, you start to realize that, risk starts to worry you and keep you awake at night. You do worry about income. And this is an important point which people don't realize. There comes a point where people say, well, actually, we need to stop worrying about the kids because they're financially secure, and we actually have to start, worrying about ourselves. And I think that's the point, where annuities start to play an important role, because an annuity is the only thing that can deliver, guaranteed income.
Yeah. And so, it is a simple product. Obviously, we've got, as you correctly say, we give an insurance company a lump sum and they give us an income for the rest of our lives. I mean, on that aspect, it's a beautiful product. The problem is, of course, is that lives are much more complicated than that, aren't they? And the deferral of the decision, you might say, well, okay, well, I might draw down for a little period, or I'll just take my tax-free cash, or I'll consider different things, and I'll buy an annuity later on. But of course, different things can happen. I mean, interest rates may fall, and annuities may become less valuable. What is the kind of optimum time, do you think, to make that decision?
I helped the FT with an article on annuities a few months ago, and I was actually quite chuffed to have the last comment. And the comment was, Billy Burrows says, it's time to buy an annuity when you want that elusive peace of mind and security. Now, trying to time an annuity purchase, is really difficult. And you're right. There's lots of, things happening. And I think you can answer your question in a number of ways, and a simple way of answering it is to say that people in retirement are faced with a number of different risks. They're faced with the risk that they could live, to be 100, equally the risk they could, die tomorrow. They're running the inflation risk. They're running an income risk. Do they have enough income to maintain their, lifestyle? There's investment risk. And the point I make is that there's no one product that can actually manage all of those risks. So you've got all these balls in the air, and I'm a great believer in saying, the right time to buy an annuity is when you want to lock into some guaranteed income, and you haven't got to do it all in one go. You can do it in stages.
Yeah. So explain. Let's talk about that a little bit further. So we can do it in stages, and give me some examples of kind of some work you've done for people where they've done it in stages and how that's worked for them.
Oh, right. I mean, the classic one is, the 10-year rule. I remember, even 20 years ago, we were saying, like, if you've got £1 million, you could think about just simply, converting 100 grand a year into, an annuity, and in 10 years' time, you'll be all annuitized. I think a more sophisticated way, and you wouldn't disagree with this, is, look at your cash flow planning. You've got a cash flow planning, and we're back to this income pyramid, and hopefully, listeners to your podcast will know what the income pyramid is. People basically have three types of income. That they've got the basic cost of living, which really does need to be guaranteed the essentials. There's then an element of income that's, discretionary, the holidays and the outings and the cruises and, gifts to the children. And that, ought to be fairly secure, but you can have some flexibility. Then the top of the pile, top of the pyramid, you've got the real luxury items. And if you were logical about it, you say, look, I want to get to a position where I don't have to worry about the bills. I don't mind taking a little bit of risk, but I don't want to take too much risk with, my holiday money. But, the top of the tree, I'm happy, to risk that. So then you can say, well, as I, get older, I want to have a firmer base. I want to have more income that's secure, and that's a good way of doing it. And again, if you have a cash flow model, you'll see that if you start off in drawdown, taking an income, is quite frightening. How that income, how the pension pot could reduce if you have, poor investment returns. And one of the risks that people are taking with drawdown that they probably don't realize is this sequence of returns risk.
Yeah. So explain a little bit more about the sequence of returns risk and how an annuity kind of counters that.
Well, let me answer it by looking at two people. Suppose we've got two people, and let's keep it simple. They've both got a pot of £100,000. One person, let's say they're in their 60s. Well, I'm going to use my £100,000 to buy an annuity, and I'm going to get £6,000 a year. The other person says, I don't like annuities. I want to go in a drawdown. So I'm going to draw the same income. I'm going to draw £6,000 a year from my pension pot. Now, if the pension pot grows by 6%, they're going to keep the capital intact. If the investment return, is more than 6%, they're going to grow. But if investment returns are less, then they're going to erode the capital. And consequently, there's a risk in the future that it'll, run out of money. But sequence of returns risk says, supposing you're taking your £6,000 and then, there's a stock market crash, so you have negative returns, or even you have a few years of very poor returns, then it's very difficult to build the capital up because the capital base has been reduced. So when you see these nice presentations, illustrations from insurance companies, they're assuming a constant rate of return. But of course, in reality, it's up and down. So if you went into drawdown, just before the pandemic, you'd be feeling, pretty bruised by now, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Now, Billy, this may be a tough question without, because I know you won't have been prepared for this, but because of your expertise. But obviously, so annuities improve in the income that they will pay. I'm not going to say the value because that's determined by the client, I suppose. But annuities improve in the income that they will pay the older you get. And of course, if you have reduced life expectancy because of some health impairment, you can gain an enhanced annuity because the insurance company will calculate how long they think they're going to be paying out for. So it's one of the bizarre kind of scenarios where you actually want to declare all your poor health when you apply for an annuity. So annuities get the higher income the older you are and the worse health you are. But of course, they also pay out less as interest rates reduce. Is there if I've got a 65-year-old who thinks, well, I'm not going to buy an annuity now. I'm going to defer it maybe till I'm 70. What will have interest rates have fallen by to kind of equal that income payout?
Good. You said that was a hard question, but it's actually quite easy because now a number of things happening. First of all, you've got, and sorry for listeners, we're going to a bit of jargon. We've got mortality drag. Now, the easiest way of describing mortality drag is on one particular year, let's say 100 people buy an annuity, and then the next year maybe one of those will die. So the older you get, the smaller the pool of people buying annuities, so the less advantage people get from mortality drag. Mortality cross subsidy. So you end up with a bit of a paradox here, which is the annuity for a 61-year-old is slightly more than the annuity for a 60-year-old because you're a year older, but the underlying value is a little bit less because you've got less mortality cross subsidy. Now, the second part of your question is, rates go up and down, but of course, annuity rates don't move in a vacuum, and you have periods of time where annuity rates are going up but your pension pot's going down, periods of time where the annuities are going down and the pension pots, so you've got a natural balance. And the key to answering the question you've asked is actually not with annuities, but it's the underlying investments of your pension pot. So without getting too technical, if annuities are priced on sort of 15-year gilts, if you had a pension pot, and this is very theoretical, invested in 15-year gilts, you're going to have an equilibrium, because if the pension pot goes down, annuity rates go up, it's a balancing act. If you're invested in the stock market and the stock market goes down and annuities go down, yeah, in trouble, and vice versa. So it actually, although it's simple to explain in theory, in practice it's bloody difficult, and all you can do is hedge your bets. I'm back to sort of my doing it in stages. One of the advantages of doing it in stages is a little bit of discipline, because you decide that you're going to buy an annuity each year, come what may. Sometimes you'll be in the money, sometimes you'll be below the curve, but over time you'll probably end up doing the right things.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And of course, so I think the key learning I'm hearing from this conversation and from the work that we both do is designing this cash flow model that works, that maybe it's not an all or nothing decision. It's actually, look, I mean, you could say the state pension that hopefully most people in the UK will be a beneficiary of at some point in time is an annuity. We're not actually handing over a capital sum to the government, but they are actually guaranteeing to pay us out an income for once we're in receipt of that state pension. And of course, it will grow depending on the government of the day and and what they want to inflate it by with inflation. But in essence, we can look at that as secure income for the benefits of our cash flow. So once we've got an underpin, and if you're lucky enough to be in a couple, we may have 2 state pensions coming in, and then we can top that up with additional income and trying to balance maybe our own needs, but also, of course, very importantly, what are our spouses' needs.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, one of the elephants in the room, is inflation, and I think sort of my words of wisdom in all of this is that you need to concentrate on income, and one of the problems with pension freedoms, and there's an interesting sort of group of people who are saying that pension freedoms haven't turned out quite the way that they should have done. One of the things with pension freedoms is that people are divorced from the concept of a pension to produce an income, and they now think of a pension as something that they can leave to the kids or just take ad hoc payments. But if you're income centric, you're saying, I've got a pot of money, I've got another 20, 25, 30 years ahead of me. What is the best way to take a tax efficient income? And at one level, it doesn't matter if that money comes, from savings, from a pension, from an annuity, but how do you get tax efficient income with peace of mind and security? So if I say to a client, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I think, at this age of 60 plus, you want a sustainable income in real terms for as long as you or your partner live without taking undue risk and with as much flexibility as is reasonable, they'll say, yeah, that's what I want. And then you unpack that and you say, well, actually, if you unpack that, that's more like an inflation-linked annuity than it is a level annuity or a drawdown. But of course, the income from inflation-linked annuities are very low. So I'm a great believer in saying that you should use the least amount of money to buy the maximum amount of income with an annuity. So you can then say, an annuities, cut to the chase, annuities are great at providing a high level of level income. Drawdown, and especially investing in equities in the long run, is a good hedge against inflation. So if you have a combination, and the right combination, and a dynamic combination, you'll probably end up with a better solution than putting all of your money into an annuity or all of your money into a drawdown at the outset. Yeah. But the thing that needs is it needs a lot of advice, and it needs quite a lot of input from the client as well.
Yeah. So this is obviously the challenge for people listening to this podcast, because actually they've got to have an advisor, or they've really got to work out themselves what the right blend of investment strategy and annuities. I understand, Billy, that you've just written a guide to annuities for quite a large insurance company. What are the frequently asked questions that you're going to include in that guide?
Well, I think we've done most, and one of the ones is when's the best time to buy an annuity, and that's all about age, and all about getting trying to second guess where the markets are. And another one is are annuities good value? Back to my sort of legalized theft, and there's been quite a lot of academic research about it, and one of the things that I sort of trying to promote in this guide is to think about the concept of annuitization rather than the product. So what do I mean? It's easy for people, for advisors and their clients to think of an annuity simply as something that provides you a high level of income. And if you are not well, you can get a higher income through an enhanced annuity. But there's something bigger happening, which is this concept of annuitization, and that's the process of converting a lump sum into a regular income. And I think there are three advantages in looking at this a concept of annuitization. First of all, it sort of demonstrates that the importance of guaranteed income and where it fits into the bigger retirement planning process. The second bit is to recognize that the grass isn't greener. There's a wonderful phrase from the Americans. There's a mistaken belief that you can get the same outcomes from systematic withdrawals, and that's drawdown, compared to an annuity. And I'd politely say that in today's climate, with high interest rates and volatile stock markets, annuities are actually quite a hard act to beat in terms of delivering income. And then the third bit, it's this whole emotional bit. It's this, peace of mind and security. And if I had a pound for every client who said to me, Billy, I really didn't want to buy that annuity, but, I had my arm twisted, but now I get this regular payment into my bank account every month. It's great. It's just like, when I was working. And people forget that. So that's the concept of annuitization. And then, once you've realize annuities are important, then you drill down and shop around for the best annuity and look at all the different options.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can imagine also another possible fear in the customer's mind when they hand over a large amount of money, possibly, or their a significant proportion of their pension savings to an insurance company is this safe?
I mean, good question. And the simple answer is annuities, they must be the safest investment because there's 100% guarantee through the Financial Services Compensation Fund. In the old days, there was a limit, but now if you have an annuity and the insurance company was to go bust, then the government would ensure that you carried on. Now, it's worth noting that we haven't seen an insurance company actually go into bankruptcy. And look at the Equitable. In practice, what would happen is if an insurance company got into trouble, then they would offload their annuities to another company who would step in and say, we will, carry on paying. And it's really important to appreciate that when you buy an annuity, you have a contract to deliver a certain amount of income, and that's paid, come what may. And of course, it's not the same, if you have a SIP, the protection isn't the same, and you're at the mercy of the stock market or how competent your advisor is in putting you into some, appropriate investments.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it is significant to consider that transfer of risk from, in essence, yourself and the investments that you choose to an insurance company that has this 100% guarantee to pay the income. I mean, they are significantly different products. And therefore suitable for different people at different stages of their lives, but definitely should be considered by many people, even if they've considered it. If you're talking to your advisor, make sure they have considered it and you can understand why they've disregarded it.
Absolutely, and I'm back to where I started and say, look, you need two-handed advisors. You say, look, on the one hand, you can put your money into an annuity. On the other hand, you can put your money into drawdown. You can have a combination. But if you are considering an annuity, if you are considering drawdown, you should at least look at the annuity as a benchmark. In the old days, whenever that was, going back, sort of 20 years when we first created, Annuity Direct, we did a lot of research with the actuarial department of, City University. And we would, and they were doing some modelling. And we sort of started off by saying, the first question, why would you go into pension drawdown if by definition you got lower income than from an annuity? And the answer is you can logically decide that I'm going to take less income because I've got the option to have flexibility and to leave money to the children. But if the objective of leaving money to the children becomes less important over time, and it becomes more important to have guaranteed income, then that swings the balance. Yeah. And the other thing we looked at was the inflation proofing, and sort of two things there. First of all, people with smaller pension pots, it's quite logical to have a level annuity because your state pension is the major part of your income, and that's inflation linked. But what the actuary said was, if you took a level annuity and didn't spend it all and put some money aside, then you could build up a pot of money outside your pension, which would provide for future inflation proofing, and that would probably give you better returns than buying an increasing annuity at the outset.
Yeah. And of course, I think as we record this in June 2024. We're obviously got a general election coming on, and every government seems to tinker with pensions on a continual basis. We've pension simplification, things got more complicated, and I do wonder whether the tax advantaged pension that allows the money to pass on to your direct descendants again and again and again in quite a tax advantaged way will continue. And I think that is often one of the reasons that people go, I want to stay in drawdown. I want to, keep that pot of money. So if I don't spend it, I can pass it on to my children. And therefore, I don't want to consider an annuity because of that very advantaged position. Whether that will be open to to a tax change. I just think it's just right for something to happen on that front.
I mean, I'm glad you said that, because there's a small group of us who take pensions seriously, who have been talking about that, for quite a while, and, it's low hanging fruit. So I'm a great believer in, joint life annuities. I remember once I had a high profile news presenter, and he said to me, look, when I'm gone, I want to leave my wife, in a tidy financial position, which was code for saying, I'll buy a joint life annuity because when I go, I don't want to leave my wife with complex decisions about, drawdown and inheritance and all the rest of it. But I think with the election, I think there are sort of three things. First of all, inflation's like sin. Every government denounces it, but they all practice it. So I do worry, about inflation. Being fair to the Labour Party, I don't think they're going to have their Liz Truss moment. So I don't think we're going to see, bond yields shoot up. In fact, I see the annuity market remaining pretty constant. Over time, the rates will decline as bond yields fall, but I don't see any sudden movement. And then the last thing is the lifetime allowance. And, you and I will have, a number of clients who are affected by the $1 million+ lifetime allowance. And I think I'm right in saying that only yesterday the Labour government came out and said that they're not going to, tinker with it. But you see, I make a really important point here, and I'm a little bit at odds with advisors because but if you ask the question, where do I take my income from? Do I take it from my pension or from my savings? A lot of advisors are saying, don't touch your pension, leave it till last, because you can leave it tax-free to your beneficiaries. So we're back to the problem that they may well change the rules on that. But as I say to people, if you take money out of your pension pot, you pay tax, and you obviously want to avoid paying higher rate tax. But if you're just paying basic rate tax, then at least you're taking the money, putting it into your own bank account where you've got future control, and nobody can tell you how to spend that in the future. Whereas if you leave all your money in your pension, you are running the risk that the legislation could change against you.
Yeah.
So another reason for buying annuities as you get older.
Yeah. Well, definitely another consideration. Well, I think we've had a pretty comprehensive, up-to-date chat about annuities there, Billy. I really appreciate your time, as always. Thank you so much for bringing your wisdom to the annuity discussion and bringing that to our audience. So thanks very much for your time.
Great. No, I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thanks once again to Billy Burrows for joining me today. Check out the show notes to find out how to connect with Billy. If you found this episode helpful, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, as it really does help more people like you find us. And for more interviews and retirement planning videos, you might like to check out my YouTube channel. Just search for The Retirement Cafe with Justin King, or click the link in the show notes. To get in touch with feedback or guest ideas, you can reach me on hello@theretirementcafe.co.uk. So until next time, I'm Justin King, helping you feel more informed in your retirement.